Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Startup Sense podcast. This is your host, Jonah Lupton, and we have a great episode for you today. On the phone, we have Wade Foster. He is the co-founder of a company called Zapier. And their little tagline is Zapier makes you happier. Or maybe it's not the tagline, but at least that's a good way to remember the pronunciation of the name. Zapier is actually a fully distributed company, which I think is pretty cool. We'll talk about that in a second. 85 employees strong at this point. Back in 2012, they raised a $1.3 million seed round. That's actually the only capital they've raised to date. They've been cash flow positive since 2014, which is pretty awesome. And let's welcome Wade to the show, and he'll tell us what they're up to. Wade, how are you, man?
I'm doing good, Jonah. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome, man. Thanks for joining us. So sometimes I give the little intro, and that includes, what exactly the company does. But I figure I'd let you kind of tell us in your own words, what is Zapier?
Yeah, so Zapier is a workflow automation app. We hook into about 800 of the most popular web apps that exist. So things like Google Apps, Slack, Salesforce, MailChimp, you name it. And it allows people to build integrations and workflows between between any of those services.
So I think, myself, I'm an entrepreneur, and most of the people listening to this podcast are entrepreneurs. We all use 10, 15, 20, if not more, web apps a day, or at least on a weekly basis. And Zapier now is connecting a lot of them, making them smarter, right?
Yeah, you got it. So, simple things you can do are, when I get an email with that has attachments, go ahead and automatically download them into Dropbox. And they can expand to much more complex workflows too.
So when did you started the company back in 2011. Was the vision or mission back then the same as it is today?
It's expanded for sure, but the core central thesis is still is very much the same, which is that, a lot of us use a lot of web apps and we wish we could get more out of them. Right. So we're trying to help you get more out of the tools that you're already using, help you automate them, help you get more done on a day-to-day basis.
So condense for us what happened leading up to the launch. I mean, how you found your co-founders. How big was the team back then? Did you raise that capital before you launched? And how much development went into it before that first version was ready?
Yeah, so Brian and I had been freelancing a lot together before we started Zapier. And one of the things we'd get asked to do from time to time was build these one-off integrations, get PayPal sales into QuickBooks or get this list of leads into Salesforce, that kind of thing. And Brian made this observation, hey, we can build a tool that lets people set up these types of integrations on their own. They don't need to hire us to do it. And so we teamed up with Mike and built the original version at a prototype. However, we were in Columbia, Missouri at the time. And so that's not an area of the country where you can just walk out your door and, a couple smart engineers pull in a couple $100,000 in seed funding. That's not typically how you do things. So we started working on Zapier nights and weekends as a side project. And it worked that way for probably about 6 to 8 months or so, where we would, go to our day jobs. And then at night we would work until 1, 2 a.m. And on the weekends as well, just to make progress. And eventually got until May 2012 is when we finally had kind of the first version ready to do a public launch. And so all throughout that time, though, we were pulling in beta users and people for a launch list and things like that to drum up interest.
So how big was that launch list in the beginning?
So the launch list was about 10,000 people that we collected on an email list before we launched in May of 2012. And I think we had a couple hundred users that we'd let in to try it prior to the launch.
Any suggestions on how to build a launch list? I mean, were you guys creating content back then, or did you use something like Beta List or Product? I don't think Product Hunt was even around. So
yeah,
how did you guys get so many people to sign up and interested in this?
Yeah, Beta List was one of the biggest drivers. I probably drove a lot of the initial ones. We also started going onto forums of these web apps. So, Salesforce has a user forum, Evernote has a user forum, Dropbox has a user forum. And I would look for the threads where people would say, I want an integration with X. And I would come into the comment section and say, hey, you can build this yourself using the APIs here and here. But if you want a third-party tool to just do this for you, me and a few friends are working on a little project that can maybe help you out. You can get in contact with us here. And I drop a link. And, we did that. I did, a handful of those every single day for a while. And none of them drove a ton of traffic, maybe a couple visitors every day. but the conversion rates were through the roof. 50% of the people that would click through on that would give us an email address because it solved exactly what they were asking for in those forums, which was, connect X with Y.
So who were some of your first partners? And by partners, I mean the web apps themselves that were signing up for the service.
Yeah, our very first ones were like the people that we thought were like the most popular. So we hooked into Twitter, PayPal, Twilio for like SMS. We worked with the 37 Signals companies, so like Basecamp and HighRise at the time, Evernote, MailChimp. A lot of the big companies that you think of in like small business, SaaS companies were the ones that we were like, okay, we want to make sure those are the ones that are on Zapier when we launch this thing.
And did you guys reach out to them individually?
So mostly all these companies have public APIs, so you don't actually have to get in contact with them to build extensions to their app. Instead, you just go to their documentation and you just start building, which was one of the great things about this type of business was that there was relatively low friction to get started on it because we could just go start building stuff. And so that's what we did. We just go start building things. And then once we got a prototype working, we would reach out to them and say like, hey, we built something that we think is pretty cool. Are you interested in, promoting this with us? And some of them would say yes, and some of them would say no, but that also helped us out a lot to get kind of some of those initial users.
How would they promote it? I mean, just adding something on their website?
Yeah, so a lot of them have what they call app directories. So where they showcase the different integrations people have built. And so they'd put it there. Maybe they have a newsletter that they would send out, hey, this is MailChimp. We have a new integration with Zapier or whatever other company. You should check it out, that kind of thing.
Okay, which I'm seeing more and more of. I mean, I feel like I'm hearing and seeing the name Zapier at least a few times a week on different sites or in different newsletters. So the name is certainly out there. There's no doubt about that. Now, how much traction did you guys have before you raised that first seed round in October 2012?
Yeah, so we didn't have much in the way of money, but we had our revenue. I think we maybe were around $10,000 in monthly recurring revenue, so really not much at all. But we had a good chunk of users, so we were I think around a few thousand active users on a monthly basis, and a lot of partners. So I think we had about 60 or 70 partners on Zapier, and the product was good. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was good user experience, easy to set up, a lot of things like that. And so on kind of the back of that progress, we were able to get that seed round done.
Now, did you guys go through Y-Combinator?
We did, yes.
Okay, because I see in your list of investors, Y-Combinator is listed along with DFJ and Bessemer. So which class of Y-Combinator were you in?
We were in the summer 2012 group.
Okay, cool. So then you raised money coming out of that. That makes sense.
Yeah, which that helps a lot too. Obviously, YC helps you kind of polish up your pitch and get things ready for investment.
For sure. Okay, so they put money in, and then it looks like you have a couple angel investors in here, Kevin Hale and Michael Liu. I'm not familiar with either of them. Who are those guys?
So Kevin was the founder of Wufoo, which is what SurveyMonkey bought I think it probably back in 2011, maybe.
Okay.
It's a really nice form software. And then Michael is like a career angel investor, basically.
Gotcha. Okay. And then, as I mentioned in the intro, you guys have been cash flow positive for 2014, which is pretty unique, I think, in the tech space to be cash flow positive that quickly. So what was the key to getting to that point?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for us, we really focused on, scalable ways that we could acquire users. So we knew, for example, every new app that we add to Zapier is a new set of users that we can potentially market to and sell to. And so we focused on making it really easy for people to build apps and integrations into Zapier. So we spent a lot of effort on making our developer platform really friendly, really accessible. It's free. So we wanted to encourage people to build integrations. And as we got more and more integrations on Zapier, it became more and more critical that the people who weren't on Zapier actually build into Zapier too. So putting a lot of that effort in really helped us, get a lot of apps on Zapier, which meant a lot more people could potentially use Zapier. So that was a big one. And then the rest was, making sure just to be smart about where we spend money. Don't increase headcount before you need it. So we had this rule early on: don't hire until it hurts. So we wanted to make sure that if we were going to hire somebody, we knew it was for a position that was definitely needed in the company. Me, a lot of times it was myself, but sometimes my co-founders and other folks would do the role for a while, and we'd be like, yeah, we really need help here. And so that would kind of force us to keep our burn rate lower instead of just, wildly increasing our headcount, because that seemed like the popular thing to do.
This is Jonah Lupton, founder of Joule and host of the Startup Sense podcast. At Joule, we help entrepreneurs and startup founders build, launch, and grow their companies by providing superior technology, marketing, and consulting services. We help clients of all sizes, budgets, and industries. We put our clients in the best position to raise capital, grow revenues, hire employees, and maximize their profits. For more information or to set up a free consultation with our team, please visit our website at joule.net. That's JOOL.net. Now, as I mentioned, you guys are a fully distributed team, which is not unheard of. I mean, I can think of a few companies that do it. I think I guess the parent company of WordPress, I believe they're fully distributed. But why was that your strategy from the very beginning, and how have you guys been able to stick to that?
Yeah, so Zapier started as a side project, as I mentioned. So when you're a side project, you don't have an office, right? You can't afford that. So you just work on it wherever you can. So Brian, Mike, and I got used to working just whenever and wherever we could, and working through tools like GitHub pull requests, or through chat, or through Trello or something like that to do our work. And then when we started hiring, we went to YC, which has you move to the Bay Area for 3 months. And after that, we needed some help, but we didn't know anyone in the Bay Area. We didn't know much about hiring. So we started thinking, who are the people we'd want to work with on this? And we kept thinking of people that we'd worked with in the past. And those people happened to be back in Missouri, or I had one of our first teammates was in Chicago, Illinois. And so we said, hey, why not? We've been working kind of remotely this whole time. Other companies are being successful at this. Why don't we just give it a go? And so we hired Micah in Chicago, and we hired James in Columbia, Missouri, and started working remotely. And it worked out pretty well for us. And then over time, we just kept doing it and have gotten pretty good at working remotely. So
that's leads into my next question perfectly. What's some of the advice for other founders that may want to build a distributed team like this? What did you guys do right or wrong that you can tell us about, so when we attempt it, we get it right too?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if you have the opportunity, being 100% remote from the very beginning helps a lot, because it builds it into your DNA. It's really tough to be kind of a split distributed and co-located company, because if you have, a headquarters here with, half your people remote, the headquarters then tends to have one set of culture and one set of way they do things, and then remote has a different set. And so that remote culture tends to become a second-class citizen, because decisions will get made at the HQ. Strategic initiatives will happen at the HQ that then kind of don't easily get communicated out to the remote folks, and the remote folks kind of feel left out then of the decision making and ultimately how the company operates. So it's way better if you can build that remote DNA from the ground up at the beginning of the company, and make sure you're 100% distributed.
Right. And I feel like when you see a distributed team, typically the company's doing it to either save money, provide a better quality of life for some people that want to be able to work from home. They don't want to have to spend their time commuting, or it just helps with recruiting, because you can hire an engineer or a salesperson anywhere in the country or even in the world, perhaps, without forcing them to come to an office every day.
Yeah, definitely. That's certainly been a big benefit for us, is being able to recruit from anywhere in the world. And have access to folks, you're just not limited to, a 30-mile radius from around your headquarter.
Right. Especially you guys are inexpensive, right? You're in the Bay Area personally.
Yep. Yep. Okay, and so if you can imagine, expensive, competitive, retention can be a challenge, because, people could walk out the door of work and there's, another 2 dozen companies that would be ready to snag up anyone. At any point in time. So it really helps with retention as well.
So with those 85 employees, are most of them in the U.S.?
Yeah, the most are in the U.S., though we do have about a dozen or so that are working throughout the world in different countries.
Cool. And mostly engineers and developers?
Yeah, I think about 30 folks would categorize themselves as engineering. And then another big chunk, probably about 20, 25 are in customer support.
Any disadvantages to having a distributed team?
Yeah, I think you have to be a lot more thoughtful about communication.
Right.
You don't have the advantage of being able to just like walk by someone's desk or tap them on the shoulder to get things communicated, or being able to just overhear a conversation and kind of step in and say, "Hey, that's actually important. We should talk about this thing."
Right.
So in a remote company, you just have to be a lot more intentional about it. So we have this rule of thumb that every like default to transparency. So all our Slack channels are public by default. That way you can see all the work that's getting done. We have our internal blog as we encourage folks to publish regularly the work that is getting worked on and the things that they're doing. Show off their work basically is the rule of thumb. That way everyone can kind of stay in the loop on things that are happening inside the company because it is all transparent and you don't feel like communication is suffering because of that.
So in addition to having the partners, which are the web apps, which are now close to 800 of them, which is incredible, you guys also have to go out and acquire users too, right?
Yep.
So what's been your customer acquisition strategy to date?
Yeah. So, the big one has been working with partners. So those 800 partners all have user base of themselves. And so, we'll work with them around the launch date. So they'll, send an email out to their customers talking about the new integration. They'll put Zapier in their app directory, things like that. We'll write content for them so that they can put it in like their welcome email. There's always like an email you get that's like advanced tips for using our tool. And part of that will showcase Zapier integrations. So that's been a big one, is working with the partners to just get better access and education to their user base.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
What else is besides those partnerships?
The next one is just making sure that we have landing pages for all the different integrations we support. And so that way, if there's search, people can, do a quick Google search for various types of integrations and they'll often find our landing pages and drive traffic to those. And then probably the other thing that's really important is just word of mouth. So, we're consistently trying to provide a really great customer service. We try and make sure that the app is really easy to use and do things that make people want to talk about us a little bit. That definitely helps.
What are some of the, your favorite customer success stories? And I guess, I don't know. I mean, I guess in some ways you have two customers, right? Because you have the web apps and then you have the people like myself. But any success stories that kind of pop in your head, or feedback that you've gotten that really boosted your,
Yeah.
convinced you that you guys are onto something big here?
Yeah, we had a customer just the other day who was talking to us where they had a person on staff that was full time was working on moving data from Typeform. They had these Typeform forms up where they're collecting stuff and they're pushing it into spreadsheets, MailChimp, Salesforce, a few different places where they basically kind of triaged the form entries into various different locations so that different folks in the companies had access to that information. Turns out that was basically a full-time job for this person. And, they found Zapier and were able to automate pretty much the whole thing. And so now that person is able to work on a lot higher level thinking and work on more critical tasks rather than basically shuffling the information from Typeform to other places. So basically they were able to take that person's full salary and apply it to much more strategic initiatives rather than shuffling data around.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a big one for sure. Yeah, I can see where Zapier makes people a lot more productive, saves you a lot of time and energy, and in this case, money too.
Yeah.
What besides managing a large distributed team, what are some of the other challenges you guys have faced?
I think we have a lot of the challenges that many companies have, right? So as we're growing quickly, we got to figure out how to get the management teams in place and create a culture that people want to work in, that sort of stuff. But we also have things like, growing the company. Like, are we doing a good job with customer acquisition? Are we doing a good job with monetizing the user base to make sure that the business grows and that we can sustain what we're working on? Are we doing a good job at making sure that those customers are happy? So does the product fulfill the need that they're looking after? So it's a lot of the stuff that every business kind of challenges face. I know most businesses kind of have their unique part, but when it comes down to running them, a lot of the stuff we share a lot of traits that other businesses have.
So you guys did it the smart way, right? You had your full-time jobs in the beginning, and then you started working on Zapier part-time. How long were you doing that? How long were you moonlighting with Zapier?
So I was doing it about 4 months, and then my
Okay.
co-founders did it about 6 months. So
Okay.
yeah.
And what was the trigger point that got you guys to go full-time on Zapier?
For me, it was we started getting a lot of customers who wanted help. Basically, they were pinging us during the daytime, and it was distracting me from my daytime job. It was like, look, there's a lot of people, who need help with this and want to get things set up. And I realized like we're missing out on an opportunity by not being able to help these folks in the moment. We'd have to wait until the evening time and late at night to give them the support and help that they needed. And I figured, hey, if I can go full time on this, I'll be able to help them on the spot, and we'll be able to make more money off of them.
Right. Any advice for other people that are in that position where they just want to test out an idea, see if it gains any traction before they go full time?
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing you can do is just be smart about it, right? Like keep your own personal expenses low.
Right.
Living in Columbia, Missouri, my monthly rent, I was in a 2-bedroom apartment, and my monthly rent was about $500 a month. Uh, so
A little bit different
that's
in the
not
Bay Area now, huh?
totally different in the Bay Area, right? But in the early days, it wasn't hard to make $500 a month, and then plus a little bit extra more money to pay for food and things like that. So when you have that low expense, you can basically work on your idea for an infinite amount of time because it's just not that expensive to pay for your own personal cost of living. I know people are in different situations. I was fortunate that at the time I didn't have any kids or anything like that. So, makes it a little easier to afford where I'm at. But, whatever your situation is, I think you can find a way to decrease your own personal expenses, which will help you out a lot when you're trying to start a company or really just test a new idea out even.
So very few of the companies that I bring on here are most likely cash flow positive because once they've raised large rounds, I typically don't ask them the revenue question. I don't ask them if they're cash flow positive or any of that stuff because I know they don't want to answer it. In your case, you brought it up in the pre-call that that you guys are cash flow positive. Does that mean that you're not going to raise any more money? Or certainly you probably don't have to, but
Yeah.
What are you guys thinking about fundraising at this point?
Good question. We're thinking no, like we're going to go as far as we can with our own revenue. Now, obviously never say never, right? Like there could be a situation that makes sense to pull in some more money or it's so cheap to raise money that maybe we do it anyway. But raising money is dilutive. And if we can hold on to our own equity and achieve the same results, that's what we're going to try and do.
How do you guys make money exactly?
So it's a subscription freemium product. So you can try Zapier for free, and keep using it for free for low levels of usage. And then as your usage ticks up, it starts at $20 a month. So it's pretty cheap to get started for most businesses. And it's that $20 a month subscription adds up over time if you get enough customers.
Absolutely. Trying to think what else I want to ask you here. Did we skip over anything that you definitely wanted to chat about?
Let's see. You've covered a lot of stuff: the founding story, how we operate, how we make money, how we get customers, how we do the remote thing. So you've tackled on a lot of the high level stuff for sure.
Do you ever regret leaving Columbia, Missouri?
Sometimes, right? Like it's home for sure. And I miss, being close to family and things like that. But the Bay Area is great too, right? Like, Bay Area's home now, and outside the cost of living, just about everything else is pretty fantastic.
So you've been out? Have you been in the Bay Area since Y-Combinator then?
Yeah, so about 5 years now. Mm-hmm.
Okay. How have things changed out there? We all hear about Silicon Valley. We all know there's a ton of activity going on out there.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on everything right now?
Well, as far as tech goes, it's as hot as ever, right? Like,
Right.
if not hotter. And the challenge though, of course, is just that there's not very much housing, and the housing that does exist is really, really expensive. So it really does make it tough, especially for early stage companies to get a toehold here because of how expensive it is. I think a lot of folks are seeing traction in other kind of, tech hubs, if you will, now, because it's just not quite as expensive. So it'll be interesting to see how the Bay Area tackles that over the next coming years.
So out of those 85 people, that are all distributed, I assume most of them are working from home, coffee shops, maybe even co-working places, co-working spots in their own city.
Mhm.
Do you think any of them miss going in, like they wish they had an office to go into?
Sometimes, but I think everyone appreciates the remote aspect, right? We all are more productive working from home, uh, being able to set up our own environment, that sort of thing. But we do miss the human interaction from time to time, and the way we compensate for that is we do retreats twice a year where we
Oh,
fly
cool.
everybody into a central location, hang out for the week, work for the week, and that really does, build a lot of camaraderie amongst the team.
Where was the last place you guys went? I assume you switch it up.
Yeah, we do switch it up. So we were in Tapatio Springs, which is the city in Texas between Austin and San Antonio.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I never heard of it before. What's so special about that area?
I don't know that there's anything so special. It was this ranch that they had that
Oh, cool.
could hold us all. The internet was great. Like they'd set it up where we were getting like 100 meg down, even like outside walking between buildings and stuff. It's just a really good venue to host about 70 different folks. So, yeah, worked pretty good for us.
Yes, I mean a lot of what you guys are doing reminds me of what Buffer's doing. Very transparent, mostly distributed. Taking these retreats. Are you friends with the guys at Buffer with Leo and Joel?
Yeah, definitely. I know those folks over there, and we trade notes from time to time.
Cool. Yeah, I mean definitely. Is this the new way of that startups are going to be doing business? You think you'll see more and more companies
Yeah,
moving
I
out of
know.
the valley?
I'm getting emailed more and more from founders who are setting things up remotely and wanting to figure out, like, how do I do this? How do I hire an employee in a different city or a different state? How do I, make sure that, people are staying glued into the company? Just asking for various bits of advice. So I'm seeing it a lot more just in my own email inbox. So I think it's definitely getting some traction amongst founders these days.
Yeah, I think so. As the big cities become so expensive, I mean, I would love to move back to downtown Boston or at least have a place there that I could go to 3 or 4 months out of the year. But it's just so expensive in
Hmm.
these big cities now. Two, three, $4,000 for an apartment.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
when you're trying to build a company, that becomes an extreme expense to take on. So
definitely does.
what are your big goals for this year?
I think we have some growth goals. We always like to push to try and double our revenue every year is a goal that we always try and push for. But outside of that, we have some product goals. Like we're working on an initiative to get Zapier out to more teams, instead of just selling it into individuals inside a team. So we want to get some collaboration features built in. We're working on making the experience of working on our developer platform a lot better. Earlier this year, we launched a new version of our developer platform, which allows devs to work in the command line interface instead of using our web browser tools. So things like just improving the developer experience, improving the user's experience, really just making that product even better, is a lot of what we try and focus on.
Awesome. And where do you think Zapier is going to be in 5 years? You think you'll still be an independent company? Do you think you'll be acquired by somebody, or are you guys going public?
I think we're just pushing to have as big an impact on businesses around the world. So, we want to get 100 million people, 100 million companies using Zapier for various things, people inside of those companies, what have you. So I think we'll be just a big old private company is kind of our goal.
And any big web apps that are not part of your platform yet that you're hoping to add soon?
Oh, good question. I mean, there's always partners that we're trying to work more with. We'd love to be working more with like with Squarespace and a few others. But yeah, the list is few and far between
Right.
between these days of big companies that aren't on Zapier.
Because most of them have that open API, right?
Exactly. Most have open APIs. Most are building onto Zapier already. So
Awesome. Well, sounds like you guys are doing a lot of cool stuff. Really want to thank you for coming on the show today and telling us all about it. What is the best way for us to help you out? Or, whether it's connect with you online or certainly go to Zapier and sign up for the 14-day free trial that I see.
yeah.
But do you use social media? Can we follow you on Twitter or LinkedIn, anywhere
Yeah.
else?
Yeah, definitely check me out on Twitter. I'm at Wade Foster on Twitter. Easy to chat with there. So if anyone has follow-up questions, they can ping me there and I'm happy to help. And yeah, if you like the product, come check it out. If you feel like your company's, kind of struggling to get traction, and you want to see what it's like on the inside of a remote company, you can check out some of the roles we have on our jobs page, zapier.com/jobs. And also just happy to be a sounding board for folks. So yeah, if they ping me on Twitter or wherever, I'll do my best to help.
Awesome. And I know your blog's pretty popular. That's zapier.com/blog. So people can go sign up for that, subscribe, and get the updates. Well, thank you so much, Wade. Really appreciate it. Want to wish you the best going forward, and I look forward to staying in touch with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jonah. This is great.
Got it, man. Talk to you soon. Bye.